Oh, hello there. Yes, well, it's another week, isn't it? Yes, it's been going on for a long time now, hasn't it? Still, nothing realistically in the Western press. Nothing. If you do a Google search for Gaza siege, you'll find lots of Arab-based news organisations reporting that no aid has gone into the Gaza Strip for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. And I think it's reaching the point whereby maybe, just maybe, somebody in the British media or the American media might need to point that out. There was a piece in yesterday's Telegraph which was slightly odd because it made me remember an earlier piece, but it's this: Hamas's claim that 70% of Gaza dead are women and children is demonstrably false. Yes, and you can see a vicious Hamas guerrillas in the front of the picture there. It made me think of something that actually came out a few weeks prior to this, which was effectively poo-pooing the notion that you can possibly ever trust anything that Hamas says, which means by definition that we have to trust what the IDF tells us. And as we well know, the IDF will, of course, when push comes to shove, eventually probably just about admit that just maybe they have actually killed large numbers of people in ambulances and then basically buried the evidence. Still, at least someone was forced to resign for that. Bad man. Yes. But it is strange because, of course, you might well argue about whether or not adult males, and you can notice that particular phrase in the Telegraph piece, adult fighting age men, who are, apparently amongst the casualties. Well, yeah, you kind of expect that with 2,000-pound bombs. They make a big hole, especially in tents. Yes. Anyway, leaving that aside, yes, you might well sort of argue that, of course, certain numbers of these people are indeed Hamas fighters, and undoubtedly some of them will be. However, that's somewhat missing the point, of course, isn't it? Because this is just noise, because we mustn't talk about what is just about to happen, which is going to be very large numbers of people literally starving to death. And nobody, Starmer government, Trump administration, Western Europe generally, wants to do anything about it. Now, you might well be Dougie Murray, who's been there, after all. Have you been there? Argue that this is entirely justified. But if you look at very, 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 very repressive regimes, and what they tend to do in terms of arguing about counterinsurgency stuff is they tend to kill very large numbers of people and then claim that they were all basically terrorists anyway. The Nazis did it in Belarus and Ukraine during the Second World War, and elsewhere for that matter. The British Empire used to do it quite a bit during the 1950s. Not that the British government, of course, really wants to admit to that unless push comes to shove in the courts. And, of course, the IDF is now doing pretty much the same sort of thing. And whether or not you want to argue about whether or not Person A would have died anyway of natural causes, and therefore the vicious, nasty Hamas terrorists are kind of counting them wrong, one has to say that if you are collectively starving a group of people to death, then that is collective punishment, which is by and in of itself a war crime. Anyway, we'll see, but I do like the way that the organisations such as the Daily Telegraph are going to make sure that there's an awful lot of noise out there to remind you that babies were definitely beheaded, and definitely all of those people are definitely Hamas, and the aid organisations that are complaining about having no food are definitely Hamas, and the UN is Hamas, and various people in the Labour Party are Hamas, and probably I'm Hamas as well, because after all, that's the way the world works, isn't it? Yes. Meanwhile, tick, 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 tick. People don't have any food. So what's going to be done? And the answer is probably nothing, because after all, we just seem to be immune to the notion of a genocide that we can just stare at blankly on our screens. Anyway, do have a glorious start to the week if you can. Yes, maybe jump up and down a bit. Send a letter to somebody. Just make a noise, because it's horrific. There's no other word for it. It's horrific. and it's a crime. I was reminded at the weekend of the 1C conference. There's a very good Kenneth Branagh film I can recommend if you can get hold of a copy of it. One of the notable things about the film, it's from about 10 years ago or so now, was how many of the senior figures who basically agreed to just simply get rid of very, very large numbers of Jewish people, poo-pooing the idea of whether or not it was legal, basically escaped any consequences of their actions after the war. I don't think people should. I think one of the major things that stops people doing war crimes is having to look over their shoulder. It used to be Nazis with the Jewish state, but those times are very, very long gone. Yes, I'm not in favour of the death penalty, apart from war crimes, because I think that might well stop people and really make them think about signing those executive orders that people should be, shipped east. Anyway, do have a lovely week if you can.